Welcome to the Real CP Show. I'm your host, CP. And today's topic, this Black American Russian woman, or a perhaps cosplaying blackness entity, complains racism in Russia was against her, but at the same time that she had escaped racism from America, various types of off ramp half lies. When I sit there and read about this, and it's one of these kind of mysterious, but not so mysterious, but silliness, but not so silliness, but disturbing, but not so disturbing, and insulting, but perhaps even more insulting, especially toward quite a number within Black Americanism, that when you have people that cosplay Black Americanism, right, when it's convenient for them, but when it's time to sit there and stick up for Black Americans and stuff like that and demand reparations for Black Americans and demand a anti-American Black hate crime law bill, this is what quite a number of these people that look at this picture, by the way, this is what they do when you say, what are you going to do for Black Americans, especially the ones that are, people that are cosplaying Black Americans. What are they going to do for Black Americans? This is what they do.
Exit station left.
Yes. Now, before I go into what I'm going to, because this is not going to be a long show whatsoever, today is January the 14th, 2026. Look at this particular picture right here. And I want you to ask yourself this question. Does she even look like a Black American in a collective way? And there are some good brothers and sisters that are not Black Americans that will look at this picture and they know who this person resembles. Now, just keep that picture in mind, because again, there are some people who again cosplay Black Americanism left and right when it's convenient for them. They like to do things like this. What? They do stuff like what? Right? Could you be like, are they real serious about this? What they trying to portray? Yes. On that. Now, let me sit there and share my screen for a second here. Let me sit there and show you this. But beforehand, when I sat there and saw this story, I also was doing like this. I'm like, yeah, okay. Okay. This person's Black American. All right, I guess. Cosplaying. So let me sit there and share my screen, and I want you to keep some things in mind. I'm sitting there sharing this, okay? Let me get one moment here. What should I show you first? One moment here. Okay, this is supposed to be her Instagram, right? It's supposed to be. Just look at this picture on this. When you look up the middle upper picture, just look at her face. Does that collectively look like a Black Americanist regardless? Now, there are error of margins where there's that rarity where, okay, that's a Black American woman. But then it's like we start asking the questions, right? Okay, we're talking about collective Black Americanism. We're talking about lineage based, right? Oh, that throws some cosplaying tethers off the ramp. When you start talking about delineation, they lose their damn minds because they know the free ride of hiding under the generic Black banner is collectively becoming over it more and more. Now, again, you sit there and see the picture. Now, look at the right picture here. This is when she's in Russia on some particular holiday. Look at this picture right here. Again, I think this is some picture within Russia where she was at. Just keep this in mind, how that she looked like she was, oh my goodness, this victim and everything. Looks like she was having a good time, right? All right, let me stop that right here. Let me sit there and share my screen again. I'm just setting a direction up. What's that one? Oh, no, not that one. Right here. Right here. Now look at this picture. Now you look at this picture and see, did it seem like that she looks like that she is in some kind of racial racism distress? When you look at this picture, don't quite look like it, right? But you look on the right side, a Black American woman who once called Russia her safe haven has now gone viral after revealing she was beaten by racist neighbors, which I wasn't quite true. It was half a white lie. In Moscow, she had moved to Russia years ago to escape what she described as constant discrimination in the U.S., even appearing in a 2020 Russian documentary praising the country for making her feel free and safe. But the sense of safety shattered when she and her baby were violently attacked in what she says was a racially motivated assault, which again is half true. But you see the words Black American. Now, there are some podcasters out there, the person who know who they are, some people who know what I'm talking about, where they will be called out and somebody will ask the question, where's your family from? Well, we were born in New York. Okay, that's generically, right? We were born in Florida. That's very generically. We were born in Virginia. That's very generically. Where's your mama from? Oh, she was born in Virginia. No. See, they won't say she immigrated over there. They just say she's from Florida. Where's your dad from? Well, he was born in Tennessee. Okay. He was born in Washington. No, we're not talking about immigrating there. Where are they actually from? Where's your grandmother from, grandfather from? Oh, they start talking, oh yeah, well, they're from Nigeria, they're from Ghana, or they're from Jamaica. Oh, see, now you got them then on that. Nothing wrong with those places. There's some good brothers and sisters from those places. The problem is that when you got people that try to sit there and try to keep that from being talked about. Now, again, look at this picture. Don't look like no Black American, right? See how people try to hide under the Black American banner. Let me play this for a second.
I feel free in living in Russia because in Russia, no matter what time it is, I can walk outside and I'm safe.
Сколько это можно? Теперь мне там страшно уже. Я не могу там даже жить. Топ студент в квартире. Я не арендую. Там прописано с 87-го года. Сколько ты можешь терпеть? Просто ужас, как милиция не помогает.
Now, did you hear that accent? Did that sound like even a Black American accent with a Russianness on that? Did that sound like that? Right? You see the sneakiness of that, right? Does this look like a Black American to you, people? This is very obvious. Some people who know that don't look like a Black American. Now, again, there is variableness of margins of error, but we're talking about collectively. And then you look at her name. Her name is Villa. Villa is definitely not overall a Black American name. That sometimes can be a maybe Afro-Hispanic name. But in this situation, does she look like that? She's Afro-Hispanic with that accent? Of course she does not. Again, variable of error on that. But she said she was born in Russia. She didn't say anything but her mama was Hispanic or Afro-Hispanic. She didn't say her daddy was Afro-Hispanic. She didn't say her mom was Black American. She didn't say her dad was Black American. It's a very mysterious thing. She really don't talk about that part. She didn't say she was born in Russia to her mom. Who was your dad then? So you can't sit there and say, oh, you Black American, he ran off. Nope, can't say that because she didn't even say he was Black American. You see how that goes, right? Very mysterious on that. Now you keep that in mind, because again, I'm looking like so let me go ahead and play the video that is the main video of this particular topic show today, right? All right. And you see how, and you look and see it yourself, and you have to look at it and see if you see extremely various discrepancies in how she's portraying herself, and if she even is a Black American woman, or did she portray in an insulting way, cosplaying Black American womanism, right? When it's convenient for her. All right, make sure you can see this. Give me a second, so I want to make sure. All right, good. All right, here we go. I'm utilizing this under fair uses doctrine, by the way.
A Black woman who moved from the U.S. to Russia to escape discrimination and racism revealed on social media that the entire in a disturbing way. Francine Villa was born in Russia but moved to the U.S. with her family when she was a kid.
Now keep that in mind. She was born in Russia. Right? On that part. They're not going to say anything about was her mom and her dad Black Americans, right? Keep that in mind. And that name Villa is 9,000% not even slightly of Black Americanism whatsoever. And you can have there are extreme fear amount of Black Americans that have an Hispanic person, mom and dad, great-grandmother, great-grandfather in their background. You get the point. That's a rarity. We're talking about logical common sense. She's not Afro-Hispanic whatsoever, 0% or none, because she didn't say anything about that at all.
Heartbreaking video, Francine claims that both she and her baby were brutally attacked by racist neighbors in Moscow. She detailed the alleged assault on Instagram. Now, the fact that the attack occurred in her homeland is an extra painful blow.
You hear that part again and listen to her voice. Did that sound like an accent of see, like Black Americans don't depend on, there are some deep South numbers of Black Americans that have certain type of accent. Some people say they do. Some Black Americans say, what are you talking about? That person don't have, that Black American say, don't have no accent. You may have somebody from the Eastern Coast that have somebody say, oh, they're from New York or Jersey or some other place, or it could be South Carolina. Or you get the point. Some Black Americans from Massachusetts, you get the point. There are one say, I don't have no accent, right? Some personnel from certain parts of California. Some people say, oh, you have an accent. Numbers of Black Americans say, we don't have an accent, right? Because you don't really hear it a lot, right? When you really saying it. Some people hear it, some people don't. Regardless, numbers of Black Americans know, okay, that person there does have an accent, okay, from the deep South part of it, compared to somebody that might have this part of a Black American accent, certain sectionality on the East Coast or West Coast. You get the point. Or certain parts of Midwest, you get the point, right? Black Americans collectively know that still regards Black Americanism, right? Did she sound like even a part that she could have been Black American with the way her voice tonality was and her Russianness of the accent she was sitting there using? You know she didn't sound like that. Look at this picture. That does not look like an overall Black American. That looks like somebody even from certain sections of Caribbean, like Jamaican, maybe from Trinidad and Tobago, maybe one of the other different islands. That don't look like no Cubano, Afro-Cubano whatsoever. Or someone could be Ghana, Ghanaian, Nigeria, Mali, Malawi. You get the point, right? Somebody like that particular part. This is how she come. This is how maybe Haitian, right? You get the point, right? But not Black American. But they hide under Black American and act like but they'll say they Black or say Black American, and they'll know they not Black American. You know how people say Black and brown? You like there are Black folks that have brown skin, or Black and Jewish people. You know what I'm talking about. But there are people who Black Americans that also practice the Judaism faith. So how can it be Black and Jewish? Do you see these little games that people play upon millions of Black Americans? Because they know it's only a small amount of Black Americans who see through these games and roast people for these insultings that people keep playing Black and this, Black and that. Right? Let's continue.
Villa had previously spoken about her move in the 2020 documentary Back in the USSR, which aired on the Russian state media channel RT. Villa said that her great-grandfather, George Tynes, who hails from Virginia,
look at that again. That does not look like a Black American on that situation whatsoever. Just saying.
Worked as an agriculturalist after moving to the Soviet Union in the 1930s. Now, much of her family still lives there, but at a young age, she moved with her mother to the United States. It was there that she spent most of her life until experiencing what she described as a traumatizing experience with police. Villa explained in the documentary that she'd approached officers for help during an emergency, but that they turned on her instead, throwing her to the ground. It was then that she decided it was time to leave. That was back in 2019. Here is how she explained it. Quote, "Why did I make up my mind to move to Russia? I wanted to leave a country where I was facing discrimination. After a year living in Moscow, she told RT, quote, I feel free living in Russia because in Russia, no matter what time it is, I can walk outside and I'm safe."
Yeah, hold on, let me go back. You see the contradiction of that. This is how you have various types of tethering people cosplaying Black Americanism, right? When it's convenient for them, they bounce in. When it's not convenient for them, they bounce out. Right? So that goes. So she was born in Russia for whatever that amount of years, right? Until her mother left Russia to come to America. Didn't say why she came over here to America like that, right? Was for economics? Was things going not so right in Russia for them? She didn't again say anything about who her father was. Because, people, especially in various parts of America, they love if they see a Black American woman who's a single mother, and which is getting ridiculous because it's like, I'm a single mother. That's not a badge of honorness, right? And then you got people, they don't ask the question to certain numbers of Sister of Chaos members that ones that are single mothers. They don't certainly ask various women within various parts of Panama's culture, the ones that say they single mothers. Overall, and some other different cultures too that are starting to catch up more and stuff like that with the single motherness, but they are, it's kept quiet a lot more, right? Because it doesn't get the flow of juice flowing people's mental capacity unless you say something about like, oh my goodness, that Black woman, she's a single mother, and that little dastardly Black American father, he just left her. See, they don't talk about how Black Americans, my fathers, are the overall most involved fathers in America. That's been proven. Oh, they don't want to talk about that. Or Black Americans are in collectively relationship with Black American women, right? They don't talk about those things like that, right? They don't talk about numbers of Sister of Chaos members that pushed away Black American men because they didn't want to be in relationships no more, or they just want some child support, right? And the Black American father said, okay, whatever on that, but I want to be involved in my kids' life. And they do everything they can to try to keep the Black American man out of the kids' life. See, they don't want to talk about that part, right? See the little sneaky, grimy little monstrosity tactic that is played in various sections of America in a type of bad propaganda way, right? To sit there and rile up people to be anti-American Black maleness. So that little disgusting game. So this particular cosplaying non-Black American woman that want people to think she's Black American, which she's not, and you heard in the section that I just played too, that they were saying that most of her family is still in Russia. First of all, Black America, there is not going to be a lot of Black American families over in Russia. Are you crazy? There's not going to be that many Black Americans. There are some Black American males that do travel, have traveled to Russia, right? And how many of them be like, man, they rarely have ever seen a Black American man. Most of the time, if they see somebody Black, that'll be somebody from Africa, right? In general, right? That they will see. So you have to listen to what they slot under real fast when they say certain things like this. You don't catch it. You don't catch it real fast. It'll go right past some people on this, right? Most of her family is still in Russia. You mean non-Black Americans? She's talking about most of her family, right? Just keep that in mind too. Oh, but she said, but her mom came to America when she was young, right? And I guess she got older, whatever it is, because she didn't say exactly what year did she didn't say how old she was when she left America. She didn't really say how old when she came to America. She said when they was young. But let's just say she's a little bit older when she left America to flee back to Russia. But at the same time, she said she fled basically because of racism. What? Black Americans go through racial racism, terrorism every day. Notice how she didn't say anything about, we need to sit there and demand from our political figures a anti-Black American hate crime law. Notice how she said nothing about that. Notice how she said we need more laws and stuff like that and enforce and stuff like that. And we don't need to have more bad seeds. We need to have more accountability against the bad seed type people. We need to sit there and have more organizations fighting for the rights for Black Americans, right? Black Americans need reparations, right? She's not saying nothing about that. Or keep in mind, she's not going to say nothing about that. She just ran off and fled back to Russia where she felt, you see what she said? I feel free living in Russia because in Russia, no matter what time it is, I can walk outside and I'm safe. No, 99% of Black American women would say something like that. 0.0% basically, 0.001 would say something like that. That they were born in Russia to a Black American man, a Black American father, a Black American mother. The Black American mother decided to come back to America, right? The Black American daughter stayed for whatever period of time, but because she was going through Black pain, or supposed to go through Black pain, oh my goodness, racism going on toward Black folks, she decided to turn back around and flee over to Russia because she felt safe in Russia. Do you see how this story makes no sense, 0%? But these how these little scamming, tether type of attachers, they will say any damn thing. And you see the most disgustingness, how they just use Black in a generic way. And there are people who do utilize extremely generic of Black when it's convenient for them. People watch these people. They do documentaries and videos saying, oh, Black in this place, Black in that place. But they want to say, no, they are of this particular African tribe. They're of this particular Caribbean place. Oh, most of the time they will not talk about that. But you listen to their tonality, you still acting like you're not Black American. Nothing wrong with that. You got some good brothers with some good looking melanation to their skin, some good looking women, not Black Americans that also have some melanation to their skin, right? As well. But many of them don't want to sit there and claim that unless it's convenient for them to say that. But it's more convenient for them to say Black in general, right? To hide the other part that they try to hide from. You said that game goes.
Safe. 5 years later, that proved to be a fantasy. Following the alleged attack, Villa took to Instagram with blood still on her face, saying a couple in her apartment building beat her with fists while she was with her 2-year-old and yelled racial slurs at her in Russian. In edited footage.
Did that sound like, again, any resemblance to a Black American? No, it did not sound like that. That sounded like some kind of tethering attacher, right? That slid under. It's okay. What can we say to sit there and get more emotionality? Say Black. You see how that game goes, right?
Footage shared by Villa of the incident, the couple can be seen arguing with her in the hallway of her building, threatening to throw out her belongings while she was seemingly blocked from entering her own apartment.
Вы в России давно живете?
А у вас прописка есть здесь?
Да, мне войти в квартиру.
Прописка есть?
Да, почему вы ко мне на «ты»? Я не могу выйти и входить в свою квартиру. Напугает моего ребенка. Кого? Он пуганный, плачет, бедняжечка. Да, зайка, ты плачешь, да? Плачешь, зайка?
Now, she accuses her neighbors of changing the locks, cutting off the electricity, and even tossing her baby's stroller down the stairs. She also claims her child was left with bruises following the incident. In footage taken from a hospital, Villa can be seen weeping in distress in the aftermath of this alleged attack. She says she's filed complaints to the police but claims they aren't helping or responding.
Oh, excuse me. Hold on for a second. Give me a second. I gotta redo something here. Give me 1 second. I gotta redo something here. Give me 1 moment. I gotta redo something. 1 moment here. Something's going on behind the scenes on my system that starts acting funny, and it does happen every so often when you're trying to play some good information. It'll start doing some stuff and some weird type of stuff. Give me a second here. Let's see if I can find what I was trying to, or what I was about to play. But anyway, let me sit there and show you this. It's an insulting, what she just did. Well, that is what she did toward quite a number within Black Americanism, right? Toward Black Americanism, right? The ones who don't see through these little tether type games. In this situation, again, you see the slick scamming silliness that they tried to play, right? When it's convenient for them to say, oh my goodness, look what this Russian couple did to me and my baby. But she never said anything about, again, who is the father? Where is the father from? Is he Black American? Nope. Because she definitely say nothing about is he Black American? Nope. Which tells me that he was either from a certain section of Caribbean place, or he's from certain area within Africa. And she's not wanting to say that, because that's not going to get people to get riled up and stuff like that. But here's the thing about it. But when it is convenient to sit there and bring up that the person's not Black American, they'll bring it up, right? But overall, they know many people, they ain't going to rile nobody up, right? So they just say Black. You see how that goes, right? When it's convenient for them. What do you mean by that? Let me sit there and let me read this particular article. This is the last thing I'm going to go over. So this right here was the article here. I'm just going to read this a little bit of this. After facing police discrimination, a Black woman in the UK, Francine Villa, remember I said that Villa is not a Black American, 0.111 of nothing percent of any resemblance of a Black American woman's name, right? Now, Villa could be a Afro-Hispanic type name, Villa, because most times somebody says, oh, that sounds like an Hispanic name, Hispanicism in there, right? But she's not Hispanic. She never said anything about her mother or father. One side of her side was Hispanic, right? Decided to return to her birth country, Russia. In 2019, searching for safety, America had denied her. A year later, she appeared in a Russian propaganda documentary, Black in the USSR, saying that she felt free in Russia and could walk outside and be safe. But that illusion shattered in July when she and her child were brutally attacked by neighbors who shouted racial slurs to them. How much more of this can one take? A bloodied Villa cried in an Instagram video filmed from what appeared to be a back of an ambulance as she described the attack. Villa said the police failed to intervene. Russia is not a comfortable country to live in for anyone who doesn't fit the image of an ideal Russian promoted by the media authorities. So that takes any kind of common sense to see. Russia would not be a diversified country. Do you see the idiotic? Since then, she has not spoken publicly about the incident and didn't respond to this particular entity for requests for comment. Kremlin state propaganda has long tried to promote the idea that people from Africa and the global Black diaspora, as if the global diaspora is going to Russia. See how that goes, right? When 999% of any type of you will call Black genericality would come from either mostly from Africa and certain sections of parts of Caribbean. That is primarily it, with 0.001 of a handful of maybe here and there Black American personnel can live free of discrimination in Russia, where they will be judged by their achievements and not their skin color. Now they sitting there relaying over some MLK stuff. Do you see these little scammers and the little psycho attachers, these little psycho tellers try to do? But you said, have you actually read the whole MLK speech? Of course not, because then you sit there and ask the question, well, why did he write that speech? Huh? Instead of taking out a few couple of sentences and then try to play off people's mindset with that, right? Because then what would have been the purpose for him to do a speech? Because the racial racism going on that he was tired himself to see his daughters, he hoped his daughters had to go through the same racial racism, terrorism, anti-black terrorism that his daughters, that himself and other Black American people had to go through and still going through right now, by the way. You see, they don't know, they think they so smart. Unlike in the West, which it portrays as plagued by racism, Villa's own great-grandfather moved from the U.S. to the Soviet Union in the 1930s, and much of her family reportedly still resides there. This little slick, silly, cupcake head teller, I can't stand when people are so sneakily tethering like this, right? Her great-grandfather did the same thing where he came from, right? He says he's moved from the U.S. From where? You see how this little game goes, right? And what about the great-grandmother? Where is she from? What about the grandmother on her dad's side? What about the grandmother on her father's side? Where are they from? Leave, boy. But for many Black Russians and immigrants, no, Black Americans overall do not talk like this, genericalities and ambiguous conversations and stuff like this. They don't sit there and say, Black Russians, Black Americans who went over there, and a rarity of Black Americans who became Russian citizens don't consider themselves Black Russians, right? And immigrants, of course, he ain't talking about Black Americans. This narrative always clashed with their reality. I'm going to start right there. I don't want to even waste more time looking at this. So you see already these little silly little tactics that these little tethers, they love trying to sit there and play these little games, and they want Black Americans to feel sympathy and other people to feel sympathy, while at the same time, when you like, hey, man, what are you going to do for Black Americans that you want Black Americans to stand for y'all? What are you going to do, right? And, they get quiet and stuff like this. But at the same time, let me just show you this. This is like the symbology.
Buddy, while we're friends, could you loan me a 10 spot until payday? What? Loan you? Yeah. Are you in any real danger? Well, no. See some other stuff. Buddy, while we're friends, could you loan me a 10 spot until payday? What? Loan you? Yeah. Are you in any real danger? Well, no. See some other stuff.
Right? See some other sucker. When it's convenient for them, then it's like, hey, y'all. Hey, Negroes. Hey, I'm Black. No, you're not. You're generic. Your generic name usage. That look at this picture. This person is not a Black American, right? And instead of them saying, I'm not Black American, I'm from this particular African place, this particular tribe, or this particular Caribbean place, right? And be proud of that. Nope, they don't want to sit there and do that, right? And that's disgusting how they sit there and negate their own cultural context and try to slot under some kind of generic Blackness, cosplaying Black Americanism, right? It's disgusting. And so at the same time, in closing, but when it's slightly, a little bit more Black Americans are waking up a little bit more, slightly, not even enough, but slightly waking up and saying, wait a minute, delineation specifically for foundational Black American is an essential thing, right? And somebody can say, because they love playing slick games, right? This society, various places, people within certain parts of economies, culture, you got some other tethers. I mean, the list goes on, but especially the tethers. Well, what about someone who's biracial? Go to Haiti's, right? In the overall scheme of demographics within Black Americanism, you're going to have an extreme small of biraciality between a Black American man and say an Anglo woman, or a Black American woman and an Anglo man, because that would be the main biraciality. They make an extremely still small percentage of the population, people. And even with that, see, you can't get caught up with that, because again, delineation is not dependent upon one particular parent being biracial, people. It goes back lineage based to at least 1800s. As long as one side, the mom side of the dad side, is collectively going back at least to the 1800s, people, which is not a long time ago, by the way, then that person can be classified as overall foundation of Black American. See, tethers, they can't go back like that, people. Do you not realize, for people to know, around 1980, what we call African immigration, whatever that's supposed to mean, because Africa is 50 plus countries, right? And how many of them are not what you would call Black Africans? How many of Arabs? And you better not call it Arab in Africa. Are you crazy? You better not call it Afrikaner, which means basically a Europeanish white person, the one that fled from over a section out of Europe to come to South Africa, reimagine themselves, right? And then call themselves Afrikaners and speak Afrikaan, right? But they call themselves, but they're Boers, right? You better not call them African. You better not call Egyptians, right? Hybrid Arabs in Egypt, you better not call them Africans. They say we're Egyptians, right? But see, again, people like very much, especially these tethers, and even some other personnel that keep trying to tell Black Americans just call yourself African. You said this little silly, disgusting tactic goes. When in the 1980s, you had a extreme smattering of demographics that was barely of any kind of radar of personnel that was allowed to come from Africa in 1980. And even right now, right? 1980, almost 50 years later, from 1980 to 2026, almost 50 years later. And when you combine some of the main African immigrationists, again, I don't like to utilize genericality because you're like, which tribe? There are several hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of tribes in Africa, hundreds and hundreds of languages. But, you know, in various types of tribalism situations going on in factions and all stuff like that going with each other. But anyway, but people like playing little games toward Black Americans and saying generic Africa. But you start asking the question, when did Africa become Africa? Right? I don't want to go into all that. That's a whole different topic. What I'm getting at, from 1980 to 2026, right? Almost 50 years. When you start looking at Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, Ethiopia, Somalia, Eritrea. In general, those are the 5 or 6 main, what we call African immigrationists overall, right? And they only will make up in that demographic only about 1% or so, maybe 1.5% overall. And you start adding the other mixture, which gets even lower and lower, it's still on around 1.5-ish, slightly more, slightly less. That's all. And the combination of various African immigration, that's all there is in 2026. That's how small it is. So 1980, you can imagine if it's only around 1 point-ish or 1 point, about 330 million demographics of America, African immigrationists in collectiveness only it's around 1.5-ish plus or minus. That's it. So you imagine it in 1980, the smattering of minuteness of African immigration that was allowed coming there, when it wouldn't have been a lot of Ethiopians in 1980s. It wouldn't have been a lot of Somalians in 1980s. It wouldn't have been a lot of Ghanaians, a lot of Kenyans in 1980s. It wouldn't have been a lot of Nigerians 1980s, people. Do you see how this goes, right? But see how for close to last 40-ish years, you have a lot of them of tethers who have slid under the banner of Black, right? And when Black America talking about racial racism, hatred that's happening to Black Americans, yeah, a lot of these tethers And then there's certain sections of certain parts of the Caribbean, the one applies to, because the primary person that comes from the Caribbean is mostly going to be Jamaicans and a few Trinidad, Tobanians, and a few other ones. Not a lot of Afro-Cubanos. That's a whole different subject in itself. And there's no pan-Caribbean love, by the way. Look what's going on in Cuba. And you say, where's the pan-Caribbean unification to stand with Cuba? Quietness. You see how that goes, right? Shh. So you got a lot of tethering that has been going on for the last probably 40-ish years, right? And now when slightly more numbers of Black Americans have understood the assignment to say, hey, it's about time for a little bit more Black Americans to start saying lineage based, right? Look what's going on in Somalia. Somalia has a lot of clickage within each other. Many of them don't care too much about other African personnel. Up in Minnesota, right? Somalia is going to be a lot more of the probably largest African immigration personnel, and they only make up about 1%. I did a whole podcast on that. Those type of fraudulent Somalians, the ones that's doing it up there, right? With the child food assistance program and home health assistance, situation fraud, and daycare fraud. Oh man, it's pathetic what numbers what those Somalians doing up there like that, right? And for so long they've been hiding under the generically Black themselves, right, while being cliquish away from any type of Black Americans, while keeping themselves away from even general Africanness, right? So this game goes, but when stuff starts hitting the fan with them, numbers they don't want to be Black. So the game goes. So as you see this picture in closing, she does not look like of any sectionality of Black American, right? The way her tonality was when she was speaking, right? She had the Russian terminology, but at the same time, right, that was not Black American tonality whatsoever. That sounded like some sectionality for certain parts of Africa, third part of a Caribbean place, some part of it. That's what that sounded like. One of the two. See, she never said anything about where her mom was from. She never said anything about where her dad is from. Right? He said, oh, her and her child, and they was getting berated by those little racial couple. And you were like, but she didn't say anything about where her little baby, her father is from. Right? I'm going to probably say he's probably certain sections of Africa. One of those little sectionality of one of those countries in Africa. That's my opinion. Or a certain section of one of those particular countries or one of those islands in the Caribbean. One of them. That's my thought pattern from where I'm observing this. Right? And she wants to be quiet about that. Right? She wants to be very quiet about that. And she, again, in closing, she never said anything about where her grandmother is from on her mother's side. Where her grandfather is from on her mother's side, where her grandmother and grandfather is from her dad's side. She didn't say nothing about that. But you see in this little, what I read you and stuff like that, or what I said that showed you in those videos, it's about just saying Black or Black American, when knowing freaking well she's one Black American, and you didn't have the people asking the questions. Now, I was reading a comment at one of the things I was showing, I think in that video, or on the comment section, or maybe some other thing I was looking at, where once out of all the comments I was reading, well, I wasn't gonna read hundreds of comments, that wasn't gonna be that important, not serious whatsoever, whatever. But there was a comment that stuck out. I said, they understand. They was basically like, they also were saying, where's the father from? Right? Where's the father? Where's the mother? Right? And you know, and you didn't see any kind of reply back there and say, oh, that's a good point. Right? Literally, I didn't see but that comment of various comments I made that was asking the question, who is the father? Where's the father from? Where's the mother from? Where's the father from? Right? None of that. See, this is why it is very essential that more Black Americans, hopefully, will start understanding the importance of delineation. See, there is no Pan-Africanism, 0.0% like that in Africa like that. You don't hear western parts of Africa jumping them down for eastern part of Africans. You don't hear numbers of eastern part of Africans jumping them down for south numbers of Africans. You certainly are going to hear a lot of North Africans trying to jump them down with South Africans, right? You're not going to hear a lot of Central Africans jumping them down by various areas of Africans. You get the point I'm getting at already. There is no Pan-African connection whatsoever in Africa. 50 plus countries are not Pan-African unified. But you got people trying to run game upon numbers of Black Americans and tell numbers of Black Americans say Africa. What? You don't hear any people in the Caribbean saying we Pan-Caribbean. They be like, no, don't be telling us that we have our own island culture and traditions and thought pattern. We are not some pan-generic Caribbean stuff. Even the thing with CARICOM, which is a whole different thing in itself, they're not pan-Caribbean unification. Like, it's not at all like that. But you got people that love trying to sit there and pigeonhole Black Americans, right? To just be the sponginess of sheep to help other people out first. While other people sitting there walking right over Black Americans left and right because other people are trying to get those resources and freebies themselves first. I thank you for tuning in to the Real CP Show.